that we're using is 1.4.3. And again, there's a new version of the DITA Open Toolkit, 1.5, that's coming again at the end of the year. And I believe they're coordinating things so that the 1.5, the DITA Open Toolkit 1.5 will come out at the same time as DITA 1.2. Now, one thing to note, DITA Open Toolkit 1.4.3 was released a few months ago. They made some changes, some structural changes or organizational changes from 1.4.2. The DITA Open Toolkit paper that I created was written for 1.4.2, so you may see things in the paper that actually reflect 1.4.2, and I'll cover them as we go through this session. I'll talk about what's changed. There's only really two significant things that affect you, but it's worth knowing. When we run ANT, we're running ANT 1.7.1. The good thing is that the version of ANT that you get with the DITA Open Toolkit is the most up-to-date one. That's 1.7.1, so you really don't have to worry about that. In XSL, mostly what we cover is 1.1, but with DITA 1.4.3, they've now included Saxon 9, so your XSLs that you create can actually use all of the wonderful features that are available in XSL 2.0. I'm interested by your comment, Leanne, and we may actually have to look there about running OT under the JRE. So the next couple of slides are some advice, mostly on working with the DITA Open Toolkit. And the first one is make sure you comment what you do. There are many, many, many lines of code and many, many files in the DITA Open Toolkit. And by making comments is the only way you're ever going to be able to track what it is you did to your files. Well, or at least certainly the fastest way you'll ever be able to find your changes. So when you add a comment, I really think it's very important to add your name or at least your initials and date, because also these make it easier to find. The date's useful because you can backtrack through emails or something and say, oh, I must have made that change around this and such time, so you can search by that, and that'll help you. The other main advice is make backups. If you're going to be hacking in files, you're going to be changing the actual files that come in the DITA Open Toolkit. So nothing is sorrier than making changes to something and then trying to back those changes out and then forgetting exactly what it is you missed or what you didn't back out and then not being able to go forward. So it's a good idea. Start out, make a backup of where you're starting from. That way, if you do have to back things out, you can always roll back to your saved copy. Also, if you have a source code management system, such as Subversion, CDS, Perforce, whatever, the list here, take advantage of it. Software engineering evolved over years, and these things came out of the need for source code management. And if you're dealing with the Open Toolkit, you're dealing with source code, so you really should take advantage of these. The output formats from the DITA Open Toolkit. Well, of course, today we're going to be focusing on XHTML output, and one of the reasons for that is apparent here. Of the standard output formats from the DITA Open Toolkit, we have XHTML, there's Microsoft HTML help, Eclipse help, and PDF. Now, of these four, 3 of them are based on, or actually are, HTML based, and so that's one of the reasons why our focus today is on HTML. The other is just that HTML is well known by people, and so it's easy to get in there and start seeing what you're doing and to start seeing what you're doing wrong or why things are failing. Okay, so let's take a look actually in the DITA Open Toolkit about some of the file locations. I'll get into actually downloading in just a minute, I think, but this slide is where it is. So we're going to talk a little bit about the organization. So Here we have, if you see in your window, I've brought on a portion of the of Windows Explorer, and you can see from here some of the files that appear in the DITA Open Toolkit. So the Open Toolkit itself has a number of XML files in it. These are ANT files that are used for building projects. And the most significant thing in here is actually down at the bottom. You'll notice there are two start command files. There's a bat and a shell. And these you're going to use for launching the Open Toolkit in a command window. And you use them every time you need to start off a command window for using the Open Toolkit. We don't mess around with most of the ANT files that are in here. The most significant things are the start command files. There's a CSS folder. In CSS, of course, we have the number of CSS files that can be used with the DITA Open Toolkit. The demo folder, as you can see, there's rather a lot of things, a number of folders in here, because the demo folder started out, when the DITA Open Toolkit started out, the demo folder was used to house the plugins. Plugins are portable containers that you can use to make your changes, put them in a plugin, and then distribute those plugins to other people. If we have time toward the end of this session, I'll talk a little bit about creating plugins. If we don't have time, there's a section in the white paper on creating the plugins, and you can always ask me if you've got questions. So, as I say, the demo is the historical area for your plugins. Some plugins actually designed, they're hard-coded to live in the demo folder. They just have to be put there. But as you move forward with the DITA Open Toolkit and you start creating plugins, you'll actually want to use the plugins folder that appears a little bit further below. The doc folder is very useful because it contains a lot of documentation both on DITA and the DITA Open Toolkit, and they're all in XML. So if you need a large test suite of files to run, you can always fall back on the doc folder for those things. The DTD folder contains all of the DTDs described by DITA. If you happen to, if you want to do specialization, you'll actually need to modify these files here when you hack, and then later when you plug in, when you create a plugin, you need to move your changed DTD and mod files into your plugin. Lib contains just a number of things that are used by the Open Toolkit itself. We don't touch anything in there. Plugins, as I said, that's where the plugins are. Resources, I didn't list this on my slide, but the resources are a good common place where you can put files that you may want to have copied into your final output. And so you'll notice there are two things here we're going to talk about in just a minute. That's the common left to right and common right to left CSS files. But you can also put images in here. As you notice, there's an index.html file. There's you can put a number of things in here and reference them then from your code. Samples folder is also very useful because it contains a number of samples that you can use to test things, and a lot of this testing that we're going to do today are based on the files that are here in the samples folder. Schema is just the schema representation of what's in the DTD. Tools, this is just where ANT lives, and finally the XSL folder, this is where the XSL style sheets live. All right. Hang on just a second. All right. So installing the DITA Open Toolkit, like Leanne said, she manages to run using the JRE. I'm curious about that. Our recommendation, or what we found, is it's best to have the Java SDK installed if you install the DITA Open Toolkit. You download the Open Toolkit from SourceForge. And wait while this comes on screen. So from SourceForge, we're at sourceforge.net projects DITA OT. And there's a green box for downloading the DITA, the test or the beta of the DITA OT 1.5. If you're brave, you can go do this. But if you just want to do normal production work, you probably want to go to the download